make that clear. Okay, A, B, C. So my move from A to B is the move along a given indifference curve, my initial indifference curve. Now I'm facing the new prices, holding utility constant. I would increase my consumption of Reese's because they're cheaper from A to B, so from 3 to about 4.2. And now I'm going to graphically demonstrate that pocketbook effect, that income effect, which is a parallel shift in this imaginary budget constraint out here to C. So what do you think the move from 4.2 to 5.5 is called? You whispered it, but I have good ears. That's the income effect. Right? Terrible writing. This says SE, this says IE. So my move from 3 to 4.2 is the substitution effect, the fact that you face these new relative prices. The move from 4.2 to 5.5 is my income effect. So the overall move, if you see a price drop, ooh. Am I going to have to draw an arrow with a ruler? That's what it's come down to. Here we go. This here is the total effect, right? The move from A to C is the change in consumption that I observe. So if I did an experiment where I gave you $10 and I put a price of $2 on Hershey's and a price of $1 on Reese's, and I figured what your optimal consumption bundle would be, this particular individual here would have chosen a combination of 3, 4, right? So 3 packets of Hershey's at $2 and spending $6 on Hershey's and $4 on Reese's, which are priced at $1. Then I doubled the price of, I half the price of Hershey's. And what that individual then does, at an income of $10 and prices of these two of 1, they would choose about 5.5 Hershey's and about 4.5 Reese's, right? The move from A to C, that's the revealed impact of a price change of that individual. What I'm doing, and this is pure economic harassment here, is breaking down that overall move from A to C into a utility constant substitution effect, facing the new price ratio, and an income effect, which is that pocketbook effect. Now, Max, I get it. This is beautiful. And I could see how on an exam this would be a total nightmare. And oh, are you right, right? But as bad as this will be for you to draw this on the exam, imagine the poor GSIs having to grade the things you can come up with in this picture. All right? So it's pretty entertaining, not for the GSIs. So what did I draw here? Right? Is there something special going on here? You told me that I always substitute towards the relatively less expensive good, such as the case here. But income goes up. What happens to the consumption of Hershey's? Right? From B to C, income goes up. Do I consume more or fewer Hershey's? More, right? So if income goes up, you consume more of something. What does that tell me about Hershey's for that good? It's a normal good, right? So for people, this person has a relatively pronounced substitution effect and a strong income response in their preferences. That means this person substitutes pretty strongly away from Hershey's due to that price change and has a pretty significant income effect consistent with that good being a normal good for that individual. So the question you ask, of course, immediately is, what would this look like if the good were an inferior one? Well, I'm so glad you asked. Let me show you. Oops. So I'm going to do this over and over again. So what I figured is this is sort of a patented, trademarked way of drawing income and substitution effects. Most books do it that way, but none really spell it out really nicely. So the way to do it, to draw the income and substitution effect, is what you do is you start out by drawing your original budget constraint. Then what you do is you draw the new budget constraint. So you start with your 2 budget constraints, right? The one with the original price and then the one with the lower price. Then what you want to do is you figure out what the optimal consumption bundle is on your original budget constraint, and you rotate the original budget constraint around the original indifference curve until it's parallel to the new budget constraint. That gets you the substitution effect. Then you simply move out to the new budget constraint, which you've already drawn, and you find the indifference curve tangent to the new budget constraint. That will give you the income effect. That last step gives you a tremendous amount of freedom to figure out whether what you're drawing is actually a normal good or an inferior good, or as I'll show you in the end, a given good. If you do what a lot of books tell you is to draw the 2 indifference curves first, you've sort of locked yourself in a world that you don't want to be in. So the last thing you ever draw for these problems is the second indifference curve. So let's try and figure this out. How about for, what's your name in the back there? Hershey's were inferior to you? What's your name? Karen? All right, so let's draw Karen's indifference curves for Hershey's being an inferior good after she faces a price drop for Hershey's. So again, what you've got here is Reese's. Reese's, Hershey's. I'm just going to start with a budget constraint. Usually on exams, I don't give you exact numbers. I just say draw a budget constraint and let the price of Hershey's drop. Okay, the left one is my original budget constraint. The right one is my new budget constraint. These are the ones you actually observe. Nothing imaginary about this. Okay, now I'm going to draw an initial indifference curve for this individual. And that one, just from experience, I can tell you want to be somewhere up here with your tangency, and you want to have this thing come down nice and far. So try something like this. And I'm going to argue that the tangency is here. Yeah, taking some, yeah, let me do it right. I'll tell you in a second why I don't like this one. All right, it has to come off this, this budget constraint. So landing, there you go, that's much better. Okay, that's my original bundle. This person's consuming a ton of Reese's and very few Hershey's at the original prices and income level, right? This is consistent with a strong preference for Reese's, but also Hershey's are relatively expensive in this world here. So what's the next step? I'm going to draw my imaginary budget constraint. How do we do this? We take the original budget constraint and we rotate it around this thing until it's parallel to the new budget constraint. If you don't like rotation, just take the new budget constraint and pull it in like this until you're tangent. All right, so that imaginary budget constraint, let's draw it in green because green is a nice color and calms people down. Looks something like this. On here, I'm just taking my ruler and I'm shifting it in parallel until I get a nice parallel imaginary budget constraint. So what do I have now? I have my point A here. I have my point B right here. So I figured out my substitution effect. My substitution effect is something from about 1.8 to about 3.2. Right? This here is my substitution effect. Now, I want to do this for an inferior good. What do we know to be true about an inferior good? Consume less if income goes up, right? So as I shift my imaginary budget constraint out parallel, I consume less. So I've moved from A to B, right? What I want to figure out now is if I shift out my budget constraint parallel for an inferior good, I'm consuming less, right? So if your good is inferior, the one that you're worried about, your new tangency, I'm trying to draw a dotted line. Looks beautiful, doesn't it? Bless you. Yeah, whatever. Okay, let's try this again. Dotted line. 1, 2. Okay, if your good is inferior, that means as income goes up, you're consuming less of it. That means your tangency on the new budget constraint has to be to the left of B. If your good is normal, that means as income shifts out, you're consuming more of it. That means your tangency has to be to the right of B. So for an inferior good, your indifference curve looks something like this. Okay, I2, where your tangency is right here. Right? As you shift up income, you're going from B to consuming less Hershey's. So your overall response to the price drop is one where you're now offsetting some of the substitution effect. That your income effect moves you from B to C and it's a negative impact, right? For a normal good, what would have happened? C would have been to the right of this dashed line somewhere out here, and your income effect would have augmented the price response you saw from the substitution effect. But because the good is inferior, the income effect moves in the opposite direction, so the overall effect, the overall price effect here, is going from 1.8 units to about 2.6 units. Right? So the income effect works in the opposite direction of the substitution effect, and the overall price response here is relatively small. Let's just compare this to the previous picture. Right? Here, we started at A, the substitution effect got us to B. If I drew that same dashed line right here, what I would see is that for all goods that are normal goods, I would be to the right of B. So C is to the right of B. The income effect moves us further towards consuming more Hershey's, right? Versus the picture I drew you now, where that tangency is to the left of B. So this here is an example of somebody who has a very small price responsiveness, versus the one before I showed you is somebody who has a relatively big price responsiveness to the change in price of Hershey's question. So it's an imaginary budget constraint. That's the best name I can come up with, right? It's not really good, but it's basically where you would consume on your original indifference curve, meaning holding your original level of utility constant if you were to face the new price ratio. Right? There is another way to explain the same concept, but 9 textbooks out of 10 like this way, and 1 out of 10 likes the other way, and I don't understand the other way. It's so complex. So I think this is the most straightforward way of explaining it, unfortunately. If you're like, Max, that's really troubling. Okay, well, we've got normal goods, we've got inferior goods. We have one more. Did you have a question? How I got from B to C. All right, so you're on board with, what's your name? Sarbash. So what you're seeing here is you're with me on the substitution effect, A to B, all right? What you want to know is where does this point C come from, right? So if I gave you $10, and let's use our original example, $2 for Hershey's, $1 for Reese's, you would consume a certain bundle. If I then drop the price for Hershey's to $1, you would consume another bundle, right? Whatever that move is from the original price consumption bundle to the post-price drop consumption bundle is the move from A to C, right? That's the overall observed thing I see. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying if you faced the original prices holding the utility constant at your original level, you'd be consuming A, right? If I change the prices but I held the utility constant, you'd be consuming B. But B is not the budget constraint that you're actually facing, right? The budget constraint you're actually facing is this black one right here. It has a higher level of nominal income than this imaginary green one. So what B to C does is it takes care of this pocketbook effect of a price decrease, right? All of a sudden you have more real income, and that's what this move does. I would highly encourage you to read through Perloff's treatment or Pindyck and Rubenfeld's treatment of this again. This is not something you're going to get from one lecture and one discussion. It's a highly confusing concept, and if you're confused right now, it's okay, all right? You'll figure this one out. I'm going to give you one more example, though. There's one more really weird good, and that's a Giffen good, right? A Giffen good is a good where if you hold income constant and the price of the other good constant, if you drop the price of the other good, Hershey's, people actually consume less, right? So it's a really, really bizarre good where people, as prices drop, holding quality, income, prices, information, everything else constant, people consume less of it. So let's try drawing this. This is really hard. This is a level of mastery. This is like Yoda level of mastery of indifference curve drawing, which means I'm definitely going to screw this up. Okay. Yes. The Giffen good. Let me explain it. Hold on one second. My original, that's red. That's supposed to be black. Okay, a Giffen good is a good that if price goes up, you consume more of it, holding everything else constant. Or the other way around, if price goes down, you consume less of it, holding everything else constant, right? The usual response is if price goes up, you consume less. If price goes down, you consume more. This is a really weird good where making something more expensive, holding everything else constant, you consume more of it, right? There's no quality effect like with steak. More expensive steak, maybe better steak than lower price steak. It's the same good. All you're doing is changing price and nothing else. Okay, so Giffen good. Let's draw it. I'm nervous. Okay, that's a beautiful budget constraint, Max. Always tell yourself how well you're doing drawing. That makes you feel more confident. Okay, here's another budget constraint. Wow, beautiful job. Okay, so original budget constraint, new budget constraint. This is going to be tough. Okay, here comes the indifference curve that goes with it. What you need is you need this thing to start really far over here, and then it comes in smooth landing, and then it goes down like that, right? We're going to assume that this is nice and bow-shaped and there's no bump here. Okay, that's just a drawing thing. So this is my original consumption bundle that I've started with. Now, again, I know all I have to do is I have to actually rotate my budget constraint around my indifference curve until I get one that's parallel to the new one. So draw the shoelace one. I'm going to do that electronically. Looks something like this, I would argue. So this is B. Right, so my substitution effect is A to B from about 3 units to about 4 units. If I wanted the good to be a normal good, right? If I wanted my good to be a normal good, I would draw my tangency here. Nope. Let's try again. Right? My tangency would be somewhere here. Let's try this again. Come on, Max. Get with the program. I hope yelling at myself is somewhat entertaining while you're waiting for me to draw this stuff. My son loves it when I make fun of myself, but he's 5 and you guys aren't. Okay, so on this portion, if your final tangency ends up there, this here, the good would be a normal good. Okay? Because that means as income shifts out, you consume more Hershey's. Well, we know that to the left here, if I'm to the left of this line right here, the good is inferior, right? Because that means as income goes up, you're consuming fewer Hershey's. What's a Giffen good, though? Does it just mean as income goes up, I consume fewer Hershey's? No. It says as price drops, I consume fewer Hershey's overall, right? So there's a price drop, and I'm consuming fewer Hershey's after the price drop than I did before the price drop. So am I just saying I'm going to the left of B, or am I saying something more extreme? You're to the left of A, right? Because what that says is as price drops, not only are you, maybe have a small price response, but you respond to the price drop by consuming fewer Hershey's overall. So that means your tangency is somewhere over here, red. Let's do it. Right, you could keep on drawing it out here if you want it. I2, somewhere over here. This is C. So my substitution effect was this, but my income effect actually goes in the opposite direction. And it is so big and negative that it's actually bigger than the substitution effect. So while the relative price change makes you shift slightly towards more Hershey's, Hershey's are such an incredibly inferior good to you that that additional income effect actually works in the opposite direction because they're inferior, and in magnitude is bigger than the substitution effect, so you're actually consuming fewer Hershey's after the price drop than before. So what does that tell us about a Giffen good? A Giffen good is is a super inferior good, right? It's a good that has such a strong negative income effect that in fact it's bigger in magnitude than the substitution effect, and opposite in sign. What I would implore you to do, please, okay, go home, open yourself a can of sparkling water or a glass bottle, less energy intensive, or get some tap water, even better. Sit down and try and draw these 3 pictures I did for you and see that they look the same, and then make yourself draw them again, but do it the opposite way. Do it for a price increase and see if you can get them. If it takes you 2 or 3 times to get the first ones right and about 10 times to get the Giffen good one right, that's about normal. All right, get yourself a nice stack of recycled paper and do it. But just looking at these messy pictures I drew here for you is not enough. It may seem like you could do this on an exam. Trust me, only about 10% of you could actually do it, and that's mostly because you're taking this class over again. All right, I'm joking, because you're so brilliant. Okay, so that's that. Actually, if you're taking this class over again, that's evidence that you couldn't draw this last time either. But, okay, that was mean. That was really mean, Max. Should we do a little quiz? Give you some points? Yeah, we should. Let's do it. It's easy. My quizzes are easy, all right? My quizzes are attendance quizzes because I want you to be here. So get out a piece of paper. All right, no chatting. This is a hard question. It's really, really hard. All right, the first challenge of this quiz is to please put your name. Usually 5% of the class forget to put their name. Then, if you have one, please put the last 4 digits of your student ID. Okay? If it's your first 4th week at Berkeley and you still haven't made it to the Berkeley ID office and you don't know what it is, it's fine, but we have a couple of people with the same last name and sometimes I can't read your first name. Okay, and then underneath, I want you to write the answer to the following question. The Giffen good is an blank good. Okay? And the fact that I put an N here, if you paid attention to grammar, should suggest the answer. All right? So write the answer to the question. What? Oh, if you put super, I'll give you a smiley face on the answer, all right? You won't get any more credit for it, but you'll get an original Alfhammer smiley face. I have a stamp that does that, actually. Okay. Anybody need a little more time? We good? That was really tough, wasn't it? Okay. Why don't you pass the, what? There seems to be resistance to me collecting the answers. You wrote this down, right? Okay, I'm now going to collect your answers, and then I'm going to grade them and hand them into a V-space, and then you can look at them, all right? So why don't you hand them to this side, that side, this one, the other left. All just on one side, and then we'll come collect them. Oh, that's right, I get it, because if you write super inferior, then